There are 1,250 to 2,100 and by some counts over 3,000 languages spoken natively in Africa, in several major language families. Afroasiatic languages are spread throughout the Middle East, North Africa, the Horn of Africa, and parts of the Sahel.Nilo-Saharan languages are centered on Sudan and Chad. Niger. Congo covers West, Central, Southeast and Southern Africa.Khoe languages are concentrated in the deserts of Namibia and Botswana. Austronesian languages are spoken in Madagascar. Indo-European languages are spoken on the southern tip of the continent, as well as in the enclaves of Ceuta and Melilla in the north. There are several other small families and language isolates, as well as languages that have yet to be classified. In addition, Africa has a wide variety of sign languages, many of which are language isolates. About 100 of the languages of Africa are widely used for inter-ethnic communication. Arabic, Somali, Berber, Amharic, Oromo, Swahili, Hausa, Manding, Fulani and Yoruba are spoken by tens of millions of people. If clusters of up to 100 similar languages are counted together, 12 are spoken by 75% and 15 by 85% of Africans as a first or additional language. The high linguistic diversity of many African countries has made language policy a vital issue in the post-colonial era. In recent years, African countries have become increasingly aware of the value of the linguistic inheritance. Language policies being developed nowadays are mostly aimed at multilingualism. For example, all African languages are considered official languages of the African Union. 2006 was declared by the African Union as the Year of African Languages. However, although many mid-sized languages are used on the radio, in newspapers, and in primary school education, and some of the larger ones are considered national languages, only a few are official at the national level. Language groups. Most languages spoken in Africa belong to one of three large language families: Afroasiatic, Nilo-Saharan, and Niger-Congo. Another 100 belong to small families such as Ubanguian and the various families called Khoisan, or the Indo-European and Austronesian language families which originated outside Africa. The presence of the latter two dates to 2600 and 1,500 years ago, respectively. In addition, the languages of Africa languages include several unclassified languages and sign languages. Afroasiatic languages. Afroasiatic languages are spoken throughout North Africa, the Horn of Africa, the Middle East, and parts of the Sahel. There are approximately 375 Afroasiatic languages spoken by over 350 million people. The main subfamilies of Afroasiatic are the Berber languages, Semitic languages, Chadic languages and the Cushitic languages. The Afroasiatic heimat is uncertain. However, its most extensive sub-branch, the Semitic languages, seems to have developed in the Arabian Peninsula. The Semitic languages are the only branch of the Afroasiatic family of languages that is spoken outside of Africa. Some of the most widely spoken Afroasiatic languages include Arabic, Somali, Berber, Hausa, Amharic, and Oromo. Of the world's surviving language families, Afroasiatic has the longest written history, as both the Akkadian language of Mesopotamia and ancient Egyptian are members. Nilo-Saharan languages. Nilo-Saharan is a controversial grouping uniting over 100 extremely diverse languages. It has a speech area that stretches from the Nile Valley to northern Tanzania and into Nigeria and Dr. Congo. Congo, with the Songhay languages along the middle reaches of the Niger River as a geographic outlier. Genetic linkage between these languages has not been conclusively demonstrated, and among linguists, support for the proposal is sparse. The languages share some unusual morphology, but if they are related, most of the branches must have undergone major restructuring since diverging from the common ancestor. The inclusion of the Songhay languages is questionable, and doubts have been raised over the Khoman, Gumas, and Kadu branches. Some of the better-known Nilo-Saharan languages are Kanuri, Fur, Songhay, Nobian, and the widespread Nilotic family, which includes the Luo, Dinka, and Maasai. The Nilo-Saharan languages are tonal. Niger-Congo languages. The Niger-Congo family is the largest language group spoken in Africa and perhaps the world in terms of the number of languages. One of its salient features is an elaborate noun class system with grammatical concord. The vast majority of languages of this family are tonal, such as Yoruba and Igbo, Ashanti, and Yu language. A major branch of Niger-Congo languages is the Bantu family, which covers a greater geographic area than the rest of the family put together in the map above. The Niger-Kordofan language family, joining Niger-Congo with the Kordofan languages of south-central Sudan, was proposed in the 1950s by Joseph Greenberg. Today, linguists often use Niger-Congo to refer to this entire family, including Kordofan as a subfamily. One reason for this is that it is not clear whether Kordofan was the first branch to diverge from rest of Niger-Congo. Mande has been claimed to be equally or more divergent. Niger-Congo is generally accepted by linguists, though a few question the inclusion of Mande and Dogon, and there is no conclusive evidence for the inclusion of Abanguian. Other language families. Austronesian. Several languages spoken in Africa belong to language families concentrated or originating outside of the African continent. For example, Malagasy, the language of Madagascar, belongs to the Austronesian family. Indo-European. Afrikaans is Indo-European, as are the lexiphies of most African Creole languages. Afrikaans is the only Indo-European language known to have developed in Africa, thus, it is an African language. Afrikaans is spoken throughout southern Africa. Most Afrikaans speakers live in South Africa. In Namibia, it is the lingua franca, and in Botswana and Zimbabwe it is a minority language of roughly several 10,000 people. Over the entire world, 15 to 20 million people are estimated to speak Afrikaans. Since the colonial era, Indo-European languages such as Afrikaans, English, French, Italian, Portuguese and Spanish have held official status in many countries, and are widely spoken, generally as lingua francas. German was once used in Germany's colonies from the late 1800s until World War I, when Britain and France took over and revoked German's official status. Despite this, German is still spoken in Namibia, mostly among the white population. Although it lost its official status in the 90s, it has been redesignated as a national language. Indian languages such as Gujarati are spoken by South Asian expatriates exclusively. In earlier historical times, other Indo-European languages could be found in various parts of the continent, such as Old Persian and Greek in Egypt, Latin and Vandalic in North Africa, and Modern Persian in the Horn of Africa. Small families. The three small Khoisan families of southern Africa have not been shown to be closely related to any other major language family. In addition, there are various other families that have not been demonstrated to belong to one of these families. Mande, some 70 languages, including the major languages of Mali and Guinea. These are generally thought to be divergent. Niger-Congo, but debate persists. Abanguian, some 70 languages, including the languages of the Central African Republic. may also be Niger-Congo.Khoe. About 10 languages, the primary family of Khoisan languages of Namibia and Botswana. Sandor, an isolate of Tanzania, possibly related to Khoe. Kxa, a language of Southern Africa. 2. Or Taaui, 2 surviving languages. Hadza, an isolate of Tanzania. Bangimi, a likely isolate of Mali. Jala, a likely isolate of Nigeria. Laal, a possible isolate of Chad. Khoisan is a term of convenience covering some 30 languages spoken by around 300,000–400,000 people. There are 5 Khoisan families that have not been shown to be related to each other: Khoe, 2, and Kxa, as well as Sandor and Hadza of Tanzania, which are language isolates. A striking feature of Khoisan languages, and the reason they are often counted together, is the use of click consonants. Some neighboring Bantu languages have clicks as well, but these were adopted from Khoisan languages. The Khoisan languages are also tonal, Creole languages, due partly to its multilingualism and its colonial past. A substantial proportion of the world's Creole languages are to be found in Africa. Some are based on Indo-European languages, some are based on Arabic, some are based on local languages, while in Cameroon a Creole based on French, English and local African languages known as Camfranglais has started to become popular. Unclassified languages. A fair number of unclassified languages are reported in Africa. Many remain unclassified simply for lack of data. Among the better investigated ones that continue to resist easy classification are possibly Afroasiatic, Ongota, Gumba, possibly Nilo-Saharan, Shabo, possibly Niger-Congo, Jala, Mbre, Bayat, possibly Khoe, Gwadi, unknown, Laal, Mpre. Of these, Jala is perhaps the most likely to be an isolate. Less well-investigated languages include Arimba, Luo, Malwa, Rer, Bet Bung, Kujaj, Lufu, Moroitic, Oropom, and Wetu. Several of these are extinct, and adequate comparative data is thus unlikely to be forthcoming. Humbert and Amp. Philipson list a number of African languages that have been classified as language isolates at one point or another. Many of these are simply unclassified, but Humbert and Amp. Philipson believe Africa has about 20 language families, including isolates. Beside the possibilities listed above, there are Aasax or Aramanic, Imira-Gwen, Hassania Arabic restructured on and as a base. Kara, Oblo. Roger Blench notes a couple additional possibilities: Defaka, Dompo. Sign languages. Many African countries have national sign languages, such as Algerian Sign Language, Tunisian Sign Language, Ethiopian Sign Language, while other sign languages are restricted to small areas of single villages, such as Adamorobe Sign Language in Ghana. Tanzania has 7, one for each of its schools for the deaf, all of which are discouraged. Not much is known, since little has been published on these languages. Language in Africa. Throughout the long multilingual history of the African continent, African languages have been subject to phenomena like language contact, language expansion, language shift, and language death. A case in point is the Bantu expansion, in which Bantu-speaking peoples expanded over most of sub-equatorial Africa, displacing Khoisan-speaking peoples from much of Southeast Africa and Southern Africa and other peoples from Central Africa. Another example is the Arab expansion in the 7th century, which led to the extension of Arabic from its homeland in Asia into much of North Africa and the Horn of Africa. Trade languages are another age-old phenomenon in the African linguistic landscape. Cultural and linguistic innovations spread along trade routes, and languages of peoples dominant in trade developed into languages of wider communication. Of particular importance in this respect are Berber, Jula, Fulfulde, Hausa, Lingala, Swahili, Somali and Arabic. After gaining independence, many African countries, in the search for national unity, selected one language, generally the former colonial language, to be used in government and education. However, in recent years, African countries have become increasingly supportive of maintaining linguistic diversity. Language policies that are being developed nowadays are mostly aimed at multilingualism. Official languages besides the former colonial languages of English, French, Portuguese and Spanish. The following languages are official at the national level in Africa: Afroasiatic Arabic in Comoros, Chad, Djibouti, Egypt, Eritrea, Mauritania, Somalia, Sudan, Tunisia, Algeria, Libya and Morocco. Berber in Morocco and Algeria. Amharic in Ethiopia, Somali in Somalia, Tigrinya in Eritrea, Austronesian Malagasy in Madagascar, Indo-European Afrikaans, Niger Congo Chewa in Malawi and Zimbabwe, Comorian in the Comoros, Kenya Rwanda in Rwanda, Kirundi in Burundi, Sesotho in Lesotho, South Africa and Zimbabwe, Setswana, Tswana in Botswana and South Africa, Shona, Sindebele in Zimbabwe, Sepedi in South Africa, Indabella in South Africa, Swahili in Tanzania, Kenya and Uganda, Swati in Swaziland and South Africa, Songa in South Africa, Venda in South Africa, Xhosa in South Africa, Zulu in South Africa, Creole Sango in the Central African Republic, Seychelles wa Creole in the Seychelles. Cross-border languages. The colonial borders established by European powers following the Berlin Conference in 1884 to 1885 divided a great many ethnic groups and African language-speaking communities. In a sense, cross-border languages is a misnomer. The speakers did not divide themselves. Nevertheless, it describes the reality of many African languages, which has implications for divergence of language on either side of a border, standards for writing the language, etc. Some notable cross-border languages include Berber, Somali, Swahili and Fula. Some prominent Africans such as former Malian President and former Chairman of the African Commission, Alpha Oumar Konaré, have referred to cross-border languages as a factor that can promote African unity. Language change and planning. Language is not static in Africa any more than on other continents. In addition to the impact of borders, there are also cases of dialect leveling, CONAs, and emergence of new dialects. In some countries, there are official efforts to develop standardized language versions. There are also many less widely spoken languages that may be considered endangered languages. Demographics of the 1 billion Africans, about 17% speak an Arabic dialect. About 10% speak Swahili, the lingua franca of Southeast Africa. About 5% speak a Berber dialect, and about 5% speak Hausa, which serves as a lingua franca in much of the Sahel. Other important West African languages are Yoruba, Igbo and Fula. Major Horn of Africa languages are Amharic, Oromo and Somali. Important South African languages are Zulu, Xhosa and Afrikaans. English, French, and Portuguese are important languages in Africa. 30 million Africans speak them as either native or secondary languages. Portuguese has become the national language of Angola. Through sheer demographic weight, Africans are increasingly taking ownership of these three world languages and having an ever greater influence on the development and growth. Linguistic features. Some linguistic features are particularly common among languages spoken in Africa, whereas others are less common. Such shared traits probably are not due to a common origin of all African languages. Instead, some may be due to language contact, and specific idioms and phrases may be due to a similar cultural background. Phonological. Some widespread phonetic features include certain types of consonants, such as implosives, adjectives, the labiodental flap, and in Southern Africa, clicks. True implosives are rare outside Africa, and clicks and the flap almost unheard of. Doubly articulated labial velar stops like k, pa, and ba are found in places south of the Sahara. Prenasalized consonants, like mpa and na, are widespread in Africa but not common outside it. Sequences of stops and fricatives at the beginnings of words, such as fsa, pta, and dtskxa. Nasal stops which only occur with nasal vowels, such as versus, especially in West Africa. Vowels contrasting an advanced to retracted tongue, commonly called tense, and lax. Simple tone systems which are used for grammatical purposes. Sounds that are relatively uncommon in African languages include uvular consonants, diphthongs, and front-rounded vowels. Tonal languages are found throughout the world but are especially numerous in Africa. Both the Nilo-Saharan and the Khoisan phyla are fully tonal. The large majority of the Niger-Congo languages is also tonal. Tonal languages are also found in the Omotic, Chadic, and Southern East Cushitic branches of Afroasiatic. The most common type of tonal system opposes two tone levels, high and low. Contour tones do occur, and can often be analyzed as two or more tones in succession on a single syllable. Tone melodies play an important role, meaning that it is often possible to state significant generalizations by separating tone sequences from the segments that bear them. Tonal Sandy processes like tone spread, tone shift, and downstep and downdrift are common in African languages. Syntactic. Widespread syntactical structures include the common use of adjectival verbs and the expression of comparison by means of a verb to surpass. The Niger-Congo languages have large numbers of genders which cause agreement in verbs and other words. Case, tense, and other categories may be distinguished only by tone. Semantic. Quite often, only one term is used for both animal and meat. The word nama and nyama for animal meat is particularly widespread in otherwise widely divergent African languages. Number of speakers. The following is a table displaying the number of speakers of a given language in Africa only.